Good morning. My name is Frances Walton. Everyone knows me as Fran. I'm the current president of the League of Women Voters. Thank you so much for coming out this morning, and well done on finding somewhere to park. We all know it's a premium in town. Thank you so much to the Ridgefield Library. They are our constant partners with a number of programs throughout the year, and this is an annual event that First Selectperson has performed for many years with the Ridgefield League of Women Voters and the Ridgefield Library. Since I have the microphone and I get this opportunity, I'm going to tell you about some notices for our events next month. So we instituted a monthly coffee at Queen Bee, where anybody can come along, member or not member, and we tend to talk about current issues. You're welcome to come. It's downstairs in Queen Bee. They have a beautiful room down there. That's on March the 11th in the morning. We meet around 10. We'll also be kicking off our annual fundraiser at that event. March the 13th, for Women's History Month, we will be with the library, having a showing of A Fine Line. It's a documentary produced and directed by a Ridgefield resident. She will be here with 2 local restaurateurs for a panel discussion after the showing. It's at 6:30 p.m. All the details are on the library website if you want to sign up. And on March the 15th, we will hold our annual Meet Your Legislators. All 4 state representatives said they will be here. It's a Saturday morning. We're starting at 10. It'll be down here. As you know, parking's a premium on Saturday, but we hope to see you there. Without further ado, I'd like our first select person to come up and tell you the state of the town.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. It's nice to see the parking lot full, of course, with the excellent use of our library here in Ridgefield. I remember a couple of years ago I came here and there was no parking. I had to park across the street, and I said to myself, what a great group it's going to be. And I came in and there were like 12 people in here. And I said to Brenda, I said, where are all the people? And she said, it's Mommy and me upstairs. So it's a wonderful program, and I'm glad people are taking advantage of it in our town that normally wouldn't have the opportunity because of cost, obviously, to have their kids attend some other fine places in town. So it's a good need that we're filling here. So thank you to the library, not only for that, but for today and the many things we did. I'll start with the most recent first, if you don't mind. Last night we had a referendum, yesterday. Hopefully you all voted. And we did have a good turnout, but thanks to the library in part, I'll say that we had 8 public hearings here on Saturdays, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, to help educate people. And as a result, plus there was a lot of emailing that went on, and I know the Board of Ed sent out messaging as well. We had over 3,000 people turn out to vote. Is that great? Everything's relative in life, right? It's great compared to what we had in our budget referendum, which was a very paltry 6% of the electorate showed up, and that was about 1,100 people. This referendum yesterday, we had a little over 3,000. So we tripled the number of people, but what it showed to me, my takeaway, is that we have to work much harder communicating with people today than we ever did before. Because we relied so much on the Ridgefield press and the print media to get the word out, and people relied on that. Well, I'll make my decision on Thursday when the press comes out. It doesn't happen anymore. So a lot of the information that's out there, it's like the old telephone game. If I whispered something in your ear, and by the time it got to the end, it was something totally different would come out, and we find that's a lot of the issue with social media. So we're working hard as a municipality to really, both the Board of Education and the Board of Selectpersons, Board of Finance, to have these public hearings, to get as much of the facts out there for you to understand, and that's what I hope to be able to achieve today, give you some of the facts.
What was the result of the elections?
There were 3 questions. I can give you the exact, Sean, I think you've got it, right? You could, so I don't have to do it, I'll talk to it a little bit. 3 questions. One was for roofs. What we found is that in our 5-year capital plan, we had 5 roofs, 3 elementary schools, a partial on the high school, and a partial on East Ridge Middle School, ERMS. And looking at that 5 years, the prices were escalating quite dramatically on supplies, so that if we bundled them together and went out for one bid to do all of those projects, that was the question. That way we could buy material, lock in the prices, and then get the work done over the next 2 or 3 years. That was question number 1. 2 had to do with the alternative high school and the 18 to 22 transition program. The 18 to 22s now in portables over at VP that have been there for 30 years, John, right? In pretty bad shape. The alternative high school, the same thing over in Ballard Green for about 35 years. That too, a one-room schoolhouse for multiple classes going on. That was the second question, to build a new building over by the dog park. It's called 34 Halpin Lane. I don't know why they gave it that address, because it's right on Prospect Ridge. So you pull in by the dog park and it's down in the back. Those 2 passed. The third was for a new public safety building to replace the firehouse on Katuna Street and the police station located on East Ridge. That failed by 71 votes, so I'll ask Sean to read out.
Yeah, so the first question on the roofs passed overwhelmingly. So 2,680 yes, only 506 no, so that's a big win there. The second with the A-School transition program, still pretty overwhelming, 2,067 yes, 1,112 no. And then the third question with the public safety building went down by, again, very few votes. So the yes was 1,553, and no was 1,625, so it's about 70 vote difference.
Once again, it shows the wisdom of the people in the town of Ridgefield.
Yeah. Well, we know the schools. We had hoped to do one question. And some people feel, well, you're setting us up because I have to vote one time for all of them. Why don't I get to pick and choose? And statutorily, we are allowed to do one question. But what the attorneys advised us of is that there is case law that if you do one question, it can be appealed, especially if they're not related. So you had 2 questions involving schools, the third involving other departments, and putting them together could have been appealed. If it got appealed, it could be tied up for a couple of years in court. And we didn't want to do that, so we went with the 3 separate questions, and I think it's fair. You know, people had a chance to vote on each question. It's just unfortunate that the public safety building failed by just 71 votes, but it told us something. You know, and that's what you always do in a referendum. You try and figure out, okay, why did it fail? And our takeaway is the cost of the project, the size of the project. I think that was overwhelming for a lot of people. They didn't understand why we needed a building that large. And you could only understand it if you took a tour of the firehouse, a tour of the police station, to see what those buildings are like. They're all well over 100 years old, and they look it. And it's a modern day system we're using, from radio communications all the way through. Police and fire actually trained together today, where years ago the fire department said, you know, we responded, save people. The police said, yeah, but you get to sleep at night. We don't, because we're out there. They always had that back and forth. Today they work together, train together, do everything together. That's why we're looking at a combined building. Put everybody under one roof, and economies of scale. Did we put out there what the savings would be relative to operations? No. So we're going to do homework on that. Did we look real hard at bringing down the size of the building? We did, but we wanted to design it so we wouldn't have to come back in 10 years and say, gee whiz, we need to put an addition. The social media part of it was, well, if you build that new building, then more people can move to Ridgefield, because you can hire more police and you don't have to, which is kind of a misinformation type of a fact. It's not even a fact. It's misleading people. We're building it for today, but there is room to add for tomorrow. We'll take that away. We're going to take the tomorrow component away, scale it down, and that'll be about a 5% reduction in the administrative side. The roof. You always try and build a gable roof. Why? So that you don't have to come back and ask for money to fix the flat roofs, which everyone was in question number one. They're all flat roofs, they don't last. And although you're going to slope them more than what we did years ago to get better drainage, a little bit more, too much detail, I know, I apologize. The cost, hopefully we'll have some savings there, and going from a gable roof to a flat roof. And we're looking at a couple of other things too, raising the building that reduces the amount of blasting you have to do, or rock removal. We're looking at all those options to try and get it down by about 8 to 10 million, and then come back. And then do an appraisal. Let's say we're going to sell the firehouse. What is it worth? Put that into question. Let people know if we do sell it, it's worth $3 million. That comes off of this cost. Start looking at things like that and putting that information into question so you're better informed. So,
I don't want to extend any more than you want to, but I didn't hear anything about the cost. What I heard was the location is insane, and I totally agree.
The location would be insane no matter where we put the building. I guarantee you that. We all know what the traffic is like coming in on 35, so why, God say, they locate a firehouse or an ambulance service on 35 when the traffic is so terrible? The location, you've got to realize that every single day, there's a fuel depot at the bottom of the hill, the fire trucks go up and down, the school buses are parked, go up and down all day long. The highway trucks are parked down there, go up and down all day long. This is not a new element being introduced to Old Quarry Road. I think some people are concerned about noise, sirens. They're concerned about that. Old Quarry Road isn't the issue. And most of, if not all of the members of both departments aren't concerned about the road. It was more concerned about Grove Street, getting up to Prospect, and that's a pretty narrow road. If you put 2 lanes of traffic there, there's not much room to move over. So that was a concern that we're looking at as well. But we put trucks out there a couple of times just to test, to see what would happen, where the cars would go, and there was no traffic. You can't figure it out, between 4 or 5 o'clock, we thought that would be the best time to do it, and for some reason that day, and there was school, for some reason that day, there was no traffic, so we're going to have to work on that as well. But yeah, if we looked at multiple locations, and that question, I'm going to go into a little detail, and I apologize, I'll try to be brief. Well, first we did a grid of the town to see where all the calls are. And 70% of our calls are north of the current location, so north of downtown. If you sit where I do, trucks come out, ambulances come out and take a left and head north. All the doctor's offices are on 35, urgent care is on 35. All of your assisted living is north. And every assisted living facility generates about 300 calls per year. We do 4,000, give or take. 1,000 of those calls are associated with assisted living. So again, there's an assisted living on Old Quarry Road. We are in and out of there all the time, John, all the time. And what it is, we're thinking about making this change, is charging the assisted living facility $500 every time they call for a lift assist. And that means Rudy fell out of bed. He's laying on the floor, and management tells the people working there, do not try and pick him up. Make him comfortable, put a pillow under his head, give him a blanket, call 911. Call comes in, and under the law, 911, we have to respond. So the ambulance and an engine respond, help get Rudy back in the bed, and then go back on the road. We don't charge extra for that. So we're thinking of placing like a $300, $400, $500 fee to let these private entities know that they shouldn't be pushing off their responsibilities on town services. That's a huge impact and a tremendous cost. So back to Old Quarry Road, you have a fuel depot, you have an assisted living facility, we have trucks that go up and down there making calls all day long. Old Quarry isn't the issue, it's more of a Grove Street concern.
It may not factually be the issue, but it is perception.
Perception, and you know what?
And the, no, it seems to me that the campaign that you outlined, I think, very well just now, in a couple of
Yes.
seconds.
Yes.
School buses, town trucks, et cetera, that was not made. No-
Yeah, we did that in all of our public hearings, and Andy was here for most of them, or Brenda. We've made that multiple times to address that issue, but you just can't get to all the people about every
I didn't see it in
individual
print
question.
anywhere.
Excuse me?
I did not see it in print anywhere.
I know, you don't see a lot in print today. That's been a problem. But, thank you. Point well made, and we'll be sure to cover it going forward. So anyway, back to the state of the town. The vote was yesterday, we had a referendum. The two schools passed the roofs, the A school. And I want to just spend a little bit of time there. If you recall, we did a big town meeting up at Scotts Ridge Middle School. We had over 300 people in the auditorium to vote on a lease, again, on Old Quarry Road, Grove Street, for 11,000 square feet, called 66 Grove Street. And we negotiated that, Sean, 6 months, 8 months, and came to a conclusion. We were going to rent it for the A school and for the 18 to 22 transition program. It would have cost us about $200,000, a little bit more, if you throw in utilities and other miscellaneous expenses per year, 10-year lease. And then the administration gave us a fit-up number, a minimum of $2 million. It was $2 million to 2.5 in there to redo the interior to accommodate the A school and the 18 to 22 program. We passed the town meeting at Scotts Ridge. That day, that night, the owner of Chef's Warehouse called. Now they have 18,000 square feet up at the Venus building, the old high school. And the owner said to me, I'm heading to Europe. I'll be gone for 2 to 3 weeks. But when I get back, I want to talk to you about the square footage I have. Because post-COVID, no one wants to come back to work. They all want to work from home. And I've got all this square footage. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, so I need to talk to you about it. So the town meeting passed, I'm laying in bed and I'm thinking, oh, if I ever sign that lease and then Chris gives up a ton of square footage, people are going to say, what in God's name were you thinking? So I held off. And the town meeting was the authority to sign the lease, correct, John? Not a mandate to sign it. It's the authority to sign it. So I figured better do my homework and see what Chris decides, Chef's Warehouse. Long story made short, a month later, they finally decide, we're not going to do anything, we're going to keep the square footage we have. He said, I hope that doesn't mix you up. I was thinking one thing, and what came out was, no, I'm glad to hang on to the revenues. We can really use the revenues. That's fabulous. I'm so happy to see you're staying. But in reality, it was like, oh my God, now what do we do? Because the gentleman who owned 66 was really pushing us, if you remember, coming to our Board of Selectmen meeting. If you don't sign this lease by midnight, I'm pulling it. And he did. Because we said we can't sign it at this point. So Susie called, Susie DeSilva, and said, well, what's your plan B? And I said, well, maybe it's a plan C at this point, but we need to look, and I was thinking where we had looked behind East Ridge Middle School, the possibility of putting something in there behind the library or what was originally the annex. And that didn't work because we did some preliminary work and found that the wetlands line came quite a ways up close to Prospect Ridge. And we wanted to stay out of having to go through the permit process for wetlands, okay. mainly because we needed to get this building built. It wasn't as if we had 2 or 3 years, because the portables had been outgrown, and if we have to outsource, according to Susie and her team, obviously it's factual, John Paradiso is here, Christine is here, 100,000 a year, 150,000 per student would be our cost to outsource for these types of educational needs. So time is of the essence. And I came back down to where we looked at pickleball. Pickleball always comes into the conversation. So we had done a lot of preliminary work, engineering work, site plans for the pickleball, and pulled that out and said, gee, there's no wetlands. There is way down at the bottom of the hill, but it wouldn't affect us. It's got a nice slope to it. I called the local guy, Steve Zemo, and he gave me some good advice and who to use and who to talk to, etc. And that's what was the second question, to build a new, I keep saying affordable, I'll cover that in a minute, alternative high school in 18 to 22. It's going to be 8,000 square feet, 2 floors, 4,000 square feet each. Someone asked the question, why wouldn't you do modular or panelized system? We looked at that. There's a company doing work in Stanford, a modular called Modular Genius out of Baltimore. And the number came in $200 a square foot more expensive than doing the stick frame that we have gotten all of the detailed numbers for. So we feel comfortable with the 3.9, roughly 4 million that was in the budget to build this building. And I had a meeting this morning to told Jake, our director of facilities, to get up to planning and zoning, get all the permits lined up because we have to move on this. I think we can start with some tree removal. There are minimal trees that need to be removed. We did get zoning approval by the way, but still, we want to have good communication. We want to lead by example, right? Not like Branchville Road, which is a whole other issue. So we're going to move on that. That passed, and then finally with the public safety bill, we heard about that. And then we'll be coming back with more public hearings. I'm sorry, Brenda. Andy, but we'll be doing more Saturdays, and it is exhausting, but it's got to get done. There's no question about it. So we'll make some modifications and bring it back. We're looking at a referendum the second week of September. And that was just decided, looked at this morning. There's nothing concrete about it, but that's what we'll be doing. Let me jump to the town's financial status a little bit. I usually do the year that closed, which was 2024. We finished with a surplus, a good surplus. Went back into the fund balance. It was a great year. And 25, a little different. The Board of Finance allocated $2.75 million out of our fund balance, which means they deducted it from the bank account on paper and allocated it to the town's budget to buy down the mill rate, so your taxes didn't go up as much, right? Well, there's always a danger with that when you use one-time revenues to cover recurring expenses. It's like using your savings account to pay your mortgage. At some point, you're going to run out of money. In this case, we're using about 1.7 of the 2.7, maybe a little less. So that money that we're using creates a hole on the revenue side, right? Because we don't have a fresh revenue coming in to replace that. So that's one issue. Costs have escalated dramatically. The Board of Education just voted Monday night on a 4.215 increase to their budget. And what?
Not rounding up, it's rounding down, 211.
211? Okay, I don't know. Yeah, obviously I say 4.2. Okay, 4.2 for 2026, and we finished ours at 2.5. And there is concern that the 4.2, I'm sorry?
2.51.
Sean's on the board of Selectperson, it's 2.51. There is concern with the mill rate that would generate, especially if the Board of Finance doesn't use 2.75 million, right? And the conversation has been off the record that they're looking at about $1 million. So if the Board of Finance uses $1 million, if the Board of Education is at 4.2, and we are at 2.5, we're going to have a hefty mill rate increase. That's unfortunate. I think it's over 4. I don't have that. I do have a sheet that kind of explains that. It would be actually, just bear with me a second, because I want to give you factual numbers. 2.51. Kevin does a lot of, it's over 5%, pushing 6%. That's something that we can't do. That will never pass alone. We'll definitely be saying, okay, now what do we do? And there's no question that if something fails, you cut. You don't add to it, then it'll be cut more. So we still have some heavy lifting we need to do. Will the Board of Finance take more on a fund balance? Sean was on the Board of Finance. He's looked at it, and in our numbers, Kevin will do, if they use $1 million, what is the fund balance level? And we want to be sure that we stay within the policy set by the Board of Finance. There's still some wiggle room for it to come down. They could use more, but that's going to be up to them, right? Does the Board of Education stay at a 4.2? We vote tonight. I don't think we're going to agree to a 4.2, but that remains to be seen. That'll be discussed tonight, and I'm sure you'll be at our meeting, because we have to figure out ways to get the mill rate down. It's not any of the programs. We're not looking at, what it costs for math or science. That's the job of the Board of Education. But we have a fiduciary responsibility to the people of Ridgefield in terms of what's acceptable in terms of the mill rate and how do we get there. And at the end of the day, my belief, and I'll speak for myself, it's going to be the Board of Finance that's going to have to determine how much of fund balance do we use, and because they ultimately will approve the Board of Education operating expense, how much, because one's a function of the other. The more money they use, the more the Board of Ed. We're at 2.5. There is a member of the Board of Selectpersons that feel we always go way too low, but we feel very comfortable. We can deliver the services and the products, etc. We made some changes, some hefty cuts to get there. The heaviest one is in roads, I'm going to tell you right now. Oddly enough, that's the single largest vote getter of any question we ever asked, I think, in the history of the town. Everyone wants their roads taken care of. And the reason we took it down is because it had grown to 2.6 plus an extra $1 million in capital. We were spending a lot of money on our roads, and not that they don't need it, but this year, and this is an anomaly, this year we've had a very rough winter, well, relative to the last 2 or 3, right? The snow, the cold, and February was incredible. Even if we get a little freezing rain, we have to go out and salt. Every time they go out and salt, it's about $15,000, by the way. And what it also did is it took up so much time that the highway department has not had time to begin the preparation for the paving program. As a result, they don't believe they could spend $2.6 million, which was originally in the budget. And that's why we took it down by 500. We are going to approve again, as I said, money in the capital for tertiary roads of another $500,000. Well, hopefully it gets approved. That will bring the total spend back to the 2.6. But we found relief there. I don't know if the Board of Education, you had your meeting, unfortunately we were in budgets, how you handled it or what you think your thoughts are. I'm sure you're going to be back at the table again thinking about that. I'm not going to put you on the spot.
It's on YouTube.
But
You can go back and watch it.
Sorry, on the YouTube video, You start about an hour in, and that's where we decide.
Okay.
We have our own channel, RPS BOE, and
Okay,
then you'll
RPS
click on,
BOE.
there's a link for live streams, because this was a live stream, and that'll
Yep.
be the first video you see.
Yeah,
Excellent.
it was Monday's date.
So do that.
It's a
Get
good,
yourself.
robust discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where we are with the 26 budget and what we're looking at in terms of taxes. Another area that is talked about a lot in our town now is considered a hot topic. A couple, but I'll start off with the moratorium on multifamily housing. The Planning and Zoning Commission has been working on that for several months, if not longer, to look at creating a moratorium to give them time to assess sewer, to assess the roads, to assess traffic, everything impacted by multifamily housing. And we did have kind of a flurry of activity, right? We have units down on Route 7. There were 94 units. I think 15% were affordable. That was denied by the inland wetlands and is in the courts. The town won the first round, and we're waiting to see what that applicant does. Thoughts are, the threats are that they're going to come in with an affordable project of about 120 to 130 units, but remains to be seen. That's not here yet. There's a lot more behind just saying that. Right? There's a lot of cost involved with it. So that's one project. We have coming up the road, we have the restaurant right down here. What's the name? What is it?
Oh, Red Rooster.
Red Rooster, thank you. They want to do 20 units. I think that's an affordable application. We have Wilton Road West, 20 units. That's an affordable application. We're looking at Branchville, the owner of the property on the left, which was Dr. Mascaro's property. There's not a lot of history to it, but I won't go into all of that. That's about 51 acres. And that had been a land sale by the federal government because of back taxes. No one was watching it. People bought it for $1.5 million and have clear cut it. For those of you who have been down there, going to Carluzzi's or wherever you go, Tuscan Cup. And I remember going down there on a Sunday, I was shocked when you look and you see this expansive open area. I turned around at Florida Road, came back up, and just looked at it, and everything is just absolutely level. Now, to the defense of the owner, they are doing a dredging of the pond, Candy's Pond. I believe they have the permits for that. I'm not sure with the state. And they were given an area that if they dredge the pond, this is where you cut the trees, stockpile everything you bring out, let the soils drain, and then you can spread them out, right, reuse them. But apparently, they were also told that they could cut, I may be wrong on this, but my information was that they were told they could cut any invasives that were on the property, as well as anything that was dead. Well, that's meant everything apparently to them. That was the open door, and they just leveled the property. And there's a lot of concern with the people in Branchville. There's a petition there of about 261 residents that are very concerned about that and the possibilities that could take place with an 8-30G. The only thing that would prevent it now is that they do not have sewer. They're looking to do what is called a small package plant, a small sewer plant that accommodates a development. And they're saying the town could possibly add on to that someday if we were to do a transit-oriented development in Branchville. I don't know if they're going to get the approvals for that. That's still a ways off. So we have talked to them. And to be perfectly blunt, I said, how much do you want for the property? And they said, what do you mean? And I said, if you were going to sell it, how much do you want for it? Because I'm going to be asked that question. Is it 1.5? That was a laugh. I had to ask. But they said, we haven't thought about it, we'll have to get back to you. The other proposal that I said was, if you do not want to sell it, recognize that the NRVT, the Norwalk River Valley Trail, will go right through the western portion of that property, and we want it. So if you were to do, out of maybe 12 or 14 acres of buildable land, because there's a lot of wetlands, you do 5, 6, 8 homes, nice little mini development, and then sell the rest to us in the back so that we could make a beautiful park, because that's what we need in Branchville for the future, is land dedicated to a park, maybe some pickleball courts. But it's possible. And the NRVT goes right through there, and that's kind of win-win that I think we need to do. And we have a pretty good chance of having something develop like that. Just up from there, there's another development. It's Morton Binn's property. That's the animal sanctuary. It's about 20 acres. He's looking to put in, I think it was 40 units of condominiums or apartments. I think it's condos, maybe apartments, tucked into the hillside. Very interesting, very different, very expensive type of living, but you can't see it from Branchville Road. But still, the traffic part of it, so people are upset about that. And then, of course, we go to the contamination issue over on High Ridge that we spend a lot of time on, 145, which is the old Francis Cleaners building, and that has been a big concern because the plume of contamination has been much greater than what was originally thought to be. And it's extending north towards St. Mary's School. It's not there yet. There have been traces of the chemicals found on Berry Avenue in monitoring wells, but not above the threshold for concern, according to DEEP. But is that going to continue in that direction? And that's what we're working on. And we do not have a cooperative owner. The person who bought that property bought it at a tax sale. I don't think they did their due diligence. I felt that they perhaps thought it was an oil tank that leaked, gas tank, but the dry cleaning that started there in 1948 and didn't shut down until 2010, the impact is substantial. And there are a lot of neighboring properties that are quite upset because of that. That puts the town in the middle because the people, the neighbors look for the town to help because we're elected to provide the health, safety, and welfare of the people of Ridgefield, right? But on the other hand, we have a fiduciary responsibility as well. So we don't want to get into the chain of title and own the property and in any way open up all taxpayers to some substantial costs involved with cleaning up that property. So that's an ongoing situation. The concern, the neighbors are twofold. One is cleaning up the property because they're putting in radon systems now. If you have the vapors from this chemical, you put in a radon system that you see a lot in Ridgefield, an exhaust pipe that just pulls in the air and vents it out into the atmosphere. Apparently that works fine, but what does it do to property values? And the initial fears that are out there are substantial, especially if it gets worse. So, you know, we've got a lot of negatives, but we have a lot of positives as well. The town, Main Street came out pretty good, I think. Traffic flow is better, regardless of what some of you may think. For the first time in a long time, I've been able to go right through town with green lights, and it's been probably 30 years since we've been able to do that. But Fran showed me a book that was done in 1950, and I have them in my office, and it looks like this. Where is Ridgefield heading? And that was done in 1950 by a group of students out of Yale that came into town. I don't know if it was the League of Women Voters that brought them in. Maybe it wasn't the League. It was the League of Women Voters that brought them in. And the conclusion of a very interesting study was that Ridgefield has two problems it needs to deal with. One is traffic. And the second one is parking. That was in 1950. And yet we're still in that same position. So I kind of look at it as something positive. Our town's alive. We have good traffic flow. It can be frustrating if you're in a hurry to go somewhere. But if we didn't have the traffic, I think the negatives associated with no traffic would be a far worse concern than being delayed a little bit. And I know people on East Ridge, High Ridge don't particularly care about the bypass traffic. Some of the projects we're looking at for the future, major capital projects. One is Ridgeberry Road. Pat's here. We're looking at redoing that road from the Danbury line all the way down to Route 116. It'll probably be done in 3 phases. The first from Danbury to roughly Old Stagecoach, maybe a little bit north of there. The second one down to Regan, maybe from Ned's Mountain to Regan, I think. And then the third one down to 116. And that's a complete rebuild, digging it all out, putting in a brand new base, all new drainage, and do it once and do it right.
My hearse will.
I borrow that from Mr. Lodwick. Go ahead, John.
My hearse will appreciate the good road.
Finally, but for years, if any of you live in Ridgebury, the gutters are constantly falling apart. It's due to the water problem there, and the water problem is due to the soils in Ridgebury. It's very clay, poor drainage, so the water has a tendency just to stay on the surface, and it just raises heck with our gutter lines. So that's a major project that we'll be looking at.
Rudy, how long would that take, would you say?
Oh, 3-4 years. Yeah, that's a major project. We had affordable housing. I just thought of it when I didn't mention on East Ridge. Tom Montanari, his project, he came in with 3 or 4 houses he wanted to build in the back. P&Z turned him down. It was too much. He came back with a 60-unit affordable housing project. And under affordable housing, that application is automatically approved unless there's some extenuating, I think. Probably sewer would be an issue, maybe not.
Safety, health, and welfare, they can prove that it's unsafe.
Yeah, safety and welfare. We won one case, I know, was the Venice Pond property years ago. The Planning and Zoning Commission, the applicant came in for 500 units. About 300 plus were approved. The applicant appealed it to the Affordable Housing Court in New Britain. Judge Levy there said the need for affordable housing is not outweighed by the need for us to protect the quality of our drinking water. And what they wanted to do was to build high density into the watershed area. And Bennett's Pond is the headwaters for the Saugatuck River, which is a major source of drinking water for a lot of Connecticut. That was appealed to the state of Connecticut. The state of Connecticut ruled that we had to give them at least 2-acre zoning in a watershed area. Why? Because the state, POCD, Plan of Conservation and Development, allows 2-acre zoning in a watershed area. And since then, we've been trying to get the state to change it, and they won't. It's been futile. But they have never come back. That's kind of hanging out there. They still own it. Mr. Garzi increased their taxes based on the approval of planning and zoning. They continue to pay the taxes on the property, but have not brought in an application, what, 15 years? At least.
But it's approved for over 300 units.
But it is approved for over 300, with about 30%, 90 of them in the affordable category. But we don't get credit for that until the CO is issued. Even though we approve it, the state doesn't give us the credit until a certificate of occupancy is issued for the property. I know some other questions. I've been talking for a while here. It's, what, 1 o'clock? What time is it? 11:50, so I'm running up on an hour. Any other questions on anything? Sports?
Yeah, are you guys going to the playoffs tonight? Finals?
What was that?
Are you guys all going to the finals tonight?
No.
The Ridgefield High School girls and boys are both in the FCAC finals tonight at Fairfield University for basketball. Basketball.
With who, Wilton?
So the girls face Fairfield Ward at 5:30, and then immediately following, the boys face some other inferior
Staples.
Ts. But it's the first time that the FCX are having it back to back at the same location. And it's the first time for the boys and girls to both be
Yeah,
in the
I was gonna
FCX
say, I've
finals at
never
the
heard
same
that
time.
before.
So half of
The
the
last
stadium will
time,
be taken
the-
up.
Is it gonna be on Huddle?
It'll be
Ridgefield.
on NFHS, I bet. And the school is taking a bus full of students for free to
The
be.
last time I went down, we were playing Wilton, and we had just gotten a Leaf, an electric car. So I figured this would be great. I'll take the Leaf down, come back. I went down, it was perfect. It actually, it didn't move at all, the needle, in terms of consuming any of the battery. And it was a cold night. I came out because I was late, I had to park about as far away as you could park. I get in the car, I turned on the radio, and the Knicks or something was on, and I had the heater going. So oh, it's gonna be a while to get out of here, and I look at the needles starting to come down. I shut the radio off, and it's still eking out. I shut the heater off, and I barely made it up Branchville Road. But that was a good game.
Yeah.
So a good one.
And they're both
So not
ranked
only
number
do we
one.
have an excellent academic program, but the athletics are unparalleled. I think we do a great job. Board of Education does a great job. Educating our children, but the social education is as important too. I'm going to do a plug for open choice. I think we need to consider that possibly. Our kids need to be exposed to other kids who may not have everything, but it went down once, so I'm not going to bother, but that's my own little personal plug. I think it's important that not only do we look at an academic education, but a social one as well. And I have a lot of kids that come in and work during their internship every May, and all of them have said, Mr. Marconi, we know we live in a bubble here. We know that. So as long as they know that and they recognize they're going out into a world that's going to be very competitive, that's good. But I don't know, maybe it would help a little bit to have some variation, a little more diversity. Any other questions, John?
Would the town be willing to take a stance collectively, without naming names, but on policy, of publishing a statement opposing the egregious cutback in social services as pending?
At the state level?
Yes.
Yeah. I know that the governor has proposed that. He has also, in parallel, proposed taking money out of the opioid settlement account. The state will be getting about $600 million over the next 18 years from distributors, manufacturers due to the opioid crisis. The OSAC was formed, Opioid Settlement Advisory Committee, to be sure that none of that money was used for anything else other than addressing the opioid issue. Whether it's, buying more technology for state police, but all of it to this point has about $158 million has been spent on programs for rehabilitation, etc. And it's been getting the job done. The number of overdose deaths, and yeah, we were up to about 1,400 in 1 year. We're down to about 1,200, 1,100 in there, so it has plateaued and come down. And I attribute that because we spent about $1 million to do a statewide distribution of Narcan, naloxone. Narcan being the, what do you call it, the little nasal spray that has saved so many lives. But that's not getting to the problem. The problem is the amount of drugs coming in. So the social services, not only is it social services in general, he specifically cut 6 out of the 8 people in the mental health addiction services department. And those are drastic cuts. And I think, I'm not going to speak for him, but the state of Connecticut receives about 22.7% of its budget comes from the federal government. We are a sanctuary state, and you all know what that is. We welcome people, New Haven, the cities, Waterbury, Stamford, and you know that the current administration is saying, you're not gonna get the money, not unless you follow the rules. So if we lose the 22% of federal money that we get, that's about $6 billion per year. And our budget's around $26 billion per year, so it's a substantial cut. I don't know if he's beginning to look at skinning down the state and doing some cuts there, but there are plenty of other areas there it could be. I'm concerned about that.
The reality is that if the federal government cuts Medicaid,
Medicaid, yeah.
Medicaid,
Yeah.
which they're threatening to do and are going to do, more certainly now that the House has passed what they passed, the state of Connecticut is not going to make up the difference. And the people that we're talking about, I'm talking about, are primarily on Medicaid.
Yes.
And the services that will have to be jacked up at the state of Connecticut's expense simply will not be provided. And I don't think so.
It's a big concern.
Board.
No, there are many people who are gonna have a negative impact on that,
And a town-
that rely on Medicaid.
A town like Ridgefield is respected mainly because it's rich, which is the wrong reason to respect it, but it's a valid entity, will be respected if it takes a stand generally, and the town of Ridgefield leading that stand, maybe, in going public with an aggressive statement that says federally and maybe state as well, that these cuts are simply unacceptable.
They are, and I did submit testimony against the cuts to mental health addiction services, for sure. But I don't know if it's fallen on deaf ears. It's going to be up to appropriations and the legislature whether they accept the governor's proposed budget. We are left flat, pretty much. Our ECS is pretty much on target to what it has been. No cuts, all of our other grants. And believe me, we don't get a lot. So the bad news is we don't get a lot. The good news is we don't get a lot because they can't cut us a lot. And we've always argued that we get less than a nickel back for every dollar of income tax and everything else that we send up to the state. But I did want to mention 3 more things that we're doing special committees that have been formed. One, as I'm sure you read and probably haven't heard recently, but that's the leaf blowing committee, the noise. They're working on that. What's interesting is there's a lot of new technology coming out. So before they make any kind of a decision, they want to be sure that they have an opportunity to review the technology, to be sure that the technology available can do what the current ones do. Okay? We're doing a senior tax credit committee. It's been about 15 years since we touched that. The last time we did it was, well, actually almost 20 years ago. Was for the school bundle project that we did in 01, 2, and 3. Seniors came to us, and what we figured was, what is their corresponding amount? And I think it was $36.70. Every year, their tax credit went up by that amount to support what their share was of that debt service. That has been frozen for a long time now. And it's time to look at it again. So everyone in Ridgefield that turns 65, it's $1,048. You can apply for it. You have to apply for it through the assessor's office. $1,048 per year. They're reviewing that. And then the other is a tax deferment program where if you earn under $65,000 per year in your household in revenue, you can defer any percentage of your taxes up to 100% to be able to stay in your home, or if you need surgery, you don't have the money. The interest is a fixed 3%, and that's adjusted by the Board of Finance every year. And they haven't changed it in a while. I don't see them changing it. There's not much talk about that. But it is an opportunity. That's going to be addressed. Al Garzi said, put it up to $100,000 a year. Because these are the people that we want to stay in Ridgefield from a business perspective. They are our highest profit product, if you will. because they don't have kids in the school. They don't use a lot of the services. They're a very inexpensive part of our community that we want to stay here and live here, and a lot of them are. It's a very growing demographic in our community, and we need to look for housing for them as well. And the last one, which the league is probably the most interested in, is a form of government. And we formed a committee to look at the form of government that Ridgefield has. What we've noticed, when I opened up, I talked about the turnout for the referendum, and a little over 3,000 people. Our last budget referendum was 6%, 1,200. When we have a presidential election, we get about 75 to 80% turnout. I don't know why it's not more, right? That's what it is. When we have an election, whether state or local, it's 45 to 60, depending on who's running and what the issues are, etc. When it comes to your budget that everyone here votes on, that has the single biggest impact on your wallet, no one votes. But if you ask the question, and I'm asked all the time, pushing the carriage and Stop and Shop, when are you going to do something about the taxes here? I say, did you vote? And
Do you
everything
have
passes.
demographic information about who drops off the electorate for those votes? Is it the younger families that are not coming out for the budget?
That's a tough one, John. I don't think we can pull that. Well, we may be able to, because we have to, everyone, when you register to vote, you have to put your birth date down. So we could go and research what was the birth, figure how old the people were that voted. And we all know that for the school budget, for the town budget, municipal budget, the schools really get the vote out. And if the schools weren't voting, I don't know where we would be at. That would be horrible. So how do you interpret that? Does that mean everyone's happy? Does that mean taxes are fine? Are they too high? Are they too low? I don't know. But we don't, certainly, we can't rely on the budget referendum. So the form of government is looking at a couple of different things. Towns our size. Wilton just went and hired a town administrator. The first select woman there, Lynn Vanderslice, reduced her salary and put it over into the town administrator salary line to make it attractive enough to get someone to come to work. But when she left office, no one wanted to run for office because it didn't pay anything. So we need to keep that in mind, right? What happens if we do hire a town administrator? Do you want to keep a first select person? And if that first select person is there and no longer the chief administrative officer, what does that person do? And I answered it at a Board of Selectpersons meeting a couple of weeks ago that what I would do is spend more time working with Hartford and fighting for issues that when we have a state senator and a state representative go to Hartford, and they're wonderful people and they work hard, but when you get there, you're given assignments. You're assigned to committees, and your focus pretty much drills down into transportation, the children's committee, the environment, etc. And you don't have a lot of time to do everything else. And I think a first select person could be a great conduit, having meetings, coming up to Hartford, coming back, reporting to the Board of Selectpersons, getting what the major issues are that are going on in the state. And the housing issue is huge. And we really aren't keeping that with track because we don't have anyone in the town of Ridgefield that's on the housing committee, right? And they can have meetings and discuss a few things, but everything happens quickly. That's why Saturday here was so good, because Jason Rojas came down. Jason Rojas is a state representative out of East Hartford, was chair of the caucus, the majority caucus. The Democrats control Hartford, so they are controlling everything that goes on, really. They have a roundtable on housing. And I sat on that for a while, but maybe 4 or 5 meetings, and haven't heard back, so either I was, because my point was the state cannot pass a one-size-fits-all in the state of Connecticut. We like having local control. Tell us what you need us to do, the direction to head in. We'll get it done. Decide where we want to do it. Let's sit down, take our time, and do it right. Right, Philip? Do it once and do it right. Like this building, the same thing applies across the board. So, Fran?
Just another thing, I don't know if everybody knows, we actually have 4 state reps now. We have
Yes.
2 central ones. We have 2 senators, one for the northern part of Ridgefield and one for the
I
southern
will
part.
clear if you turn it on.
Oh,
It's
thank
on,
you.
it's on.
You
Better?
hold it like
Closer.
this.
Is it better now?
There we
Thank
go.
you, sorry. So there are 4 reps now. We don't just have the single rep. So I also think that complicates it really, because for the state senators, Julie Kushner is Danbury, part of Bethel, and half of Ridgefield. And CC Ma has 6 towns that she covers, because she's got half of Ridgefield, Westport, a bit of Stamford, a little sliver of Norwalk. Yeah, so I think it's great when they come and do things in towns, so that the people, and I do encourage everybody to come to the meeting of legislators, because then they do hear directly from us. And Ridgefield got apportioned very strangely. There's a little tiny corner that Savick Constantine is the state rep of, and Amy Berger-Javallo is the majority. But obviously we have 2 reps for Ridgefield now. So it's not, they don't focus solely on Ridgefield. That's their complication.
I mean, it's nice, Amy is now the chair of transportation, Amy Berger-Javallo, which is excellent, that we have that kind of ability, because we do have traffic issues here. Cops Hill coming in the morning, I called the state, I said traffic's backing up all the way to 7. We have to synchronize the light between Cops Hill, Farmingville, and the entrance to Stop and Shop. They said, well, that's not on our work list. I said, okay, can you put it there? She said, well, it may take a little bit of time. And I said, when do you think you can put it on? She said, in 2030. I said, I'll be dead. 2030? Are you kidding me? Well, let me talk to my supervisor. She came back, she said, well, we'll see what we can do. We called Amy. Amy, you gotta help out with this. So she's pushing, because one thing departments in the state government don't like is when a legislator comes snooping around and asking questions. They don't like that at all, because it means there's gonna be some trouble for them. So having Amy there in transportation is vitally critical. What we're gonna end up doing there is extending the sidewalk from the Union Savings Bank, where the entrance, there's a cabinet there, that's a signal controller panel. We're gonna put a new sidewalk from there down to Farmingville. It doesn't exist now in front of Shell, we need one. And then under there, we're gonna put all the conduit we need to run a line from the controller at Union Savings down to Cops Hill, up the pole, across the street, into the panel that controls that intersection, so that they can be synchronized, like happens in New York. When this one turns red, you can see them going all the way down to keep traffic moving. That's what we need there, and the state won't do it. So, that's a little sidebar. Anything else? Mr. Katz?
I just want to say that this town, I wouldn't say this if you were in the room, but if you're not in the room, you are the most wonderful elected official, town official, local official. All kinds of credit for that. And the only other thing I want to say, which goes right along with that, is I think it's terrific that you're pursuing the noise issue regarding the leaf blower.
Yeah.
There's a lot of noise about leaf blowers, it's exactly what you need.
Right, right. You know, on the leaf blower, one of the issues came up, the original proposal by Vince Giordano, which was great. But he said he's going to exempt the municipality. So at our golf course, we wouldn't have to worry about it. I said, Vince, you can't do that. You can't tell everyone in town they have to do it, but the town itself doesn't have to do it. That's not a level playing field, so they're looking at that. And one of the issues at the golf course is that they have these huge PTO driven back to the tractor blowers that blow off the entire fairway. If you had to hand rake that or with a little back, it couldn't get done. So we need to work on that. That's more with the technology that's being developed. and they're taking their time, which is good. I know we had a question.
Just back to your second point in the addendum, what roughly is the percentage of people over 65 living in Ridgefield? And do you have any projections on how that may change over the next, say, 10 years, 5 or 10 years?
Well, since I'm there, I hope it grows. There's no doubt it's been a very fast-growing component because of the baby boomers. We've seen that across the country, and it's happening here. We have a large over 65 population. That is going to be some of the work. Is going to have to be determined how much. If we raise the basic tax credit from $1,048 by $200, how many households are there? Al says about 1,200, 11 to 1,200.
Households?
Yes.
Out of how many households in the town?
We have about 10,000.
So
10%, a little over 10, 11%.
10% are 65?
12, yeah.
Whether that's single or couple, but over 65.
Right, but don't go to the bank on what I'm saying,
No,
please.
just want to get an estimate.
Yeah, that's certainly a ballpark.
Okay.
Right. That it? Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.